guys, this is Jessica and Noam. Welcome to another episode of What's That Sound? While we've done many songs that Dave Grohl has drummed on, we've yet to do an actual Foo Fighters track. So here we are, let's let the good times grow and the Grohl times roll. It is My Hero.
The producer was Gil Norton, the drummer was David Grohl. It's so loud and bombastic, and they apparently recorded part of it in a parking lot. Let's do it.
For our drums today, we used our vintage 70s Gretsch kit, a Ludwig Superphonic snare drum. For our cymbals, we had 14-inch K-Sweet hi-hats, an 18-inch K-Dark cymbal, as well as a 20-inch K-Dark cymbal. So for the playing on this one, it is very heavy on the kick drum, so you have to be really consistent with your single kicks or break out your double kick drum. And you're really laying into the toms on this. It's very powerful, very Dave Grohl.
So the My Hero drum sound, super iconic, crazy bombastic, right, and super unique. But the things that are making it feel that way are like pretty simple, right? It's not any crazy recording techniques or anything like that. It has to do with the layering of how they recorded it, right? Even though it kind of feels like one kit, they recorded one kit and then they recorded an overdub that was largely toms and also like extra snare that was adding to a bunch of the bombastic nature of it. It has to do with the space that they recorded that extra kit in. They recorded the main kit in a recording studio. They recorded the second kit out in like a parking garage basically. So it had all this extra length and all this extra energy just from the huge ambience that it was in. And then it has to do with how they were miking those two things and how they were making them interact. On kick, really simple. 421 and a FET 47. 421 on the kick inside mic, FET 47 on the kick outside mic. This is the classic rock kick drum sound. You use the inside mic for the attack, you use the outside mic for the body. Recording them separately, you can blend them together and kind of get whatever kick drum mic sound you want out of it just from blending those alone, and then you don't have to super duper over EQ or over compress the drum to get the extra length or the extra attack. You can just get it all from the mics themselves. On the snare, again, really classic setup. We have a pair of 57s, one of them on top, one of them below. We made sure that they were exactly equidistant from the snare drum. We made sure that they were at exactly the same angle on the snare drum, and this is because we wanted them to be reinforcing each other as much as they possibly could. If the distance is slightly off, when you flip the phase on one of them, they're not going to be perfectly reinforcing each other. So we made sure that all the distance angles are exactly right. Then we flip the phase on the bottom snare so that it flips and reinforces the top snare rather than pulling away from it. On the toms, really, really basic 421s. We had these an inch away from the heads. We had them at a slight angle. The more of an angle you have on the toms, the more tone you're gonna get out of them. So if you have them a little bit more at a 90-degree angle, they're gonna be a little bit more bodied and a little bit deeper. If you have them facing kind of across the drum, they're gonna get some more attack. We had them kind of in between that, right? We wanted a good balance of attack and also a good balance of tone. We didn't want too much tone because we knew that we were gonna have big overdubs on this and we couldn't take up too much room with them. So we kind of placed the mics accordingly. Overheads, we had a pair of Schoeps V4Us. These are small diaphragm condenser microphones. They are really, really well balanced, beautiful cymbal mics, and they pick up the whole kit, but they're not overbearing in the low end, so you can really shape them for like a rock mix. With these ones, we did not put them immensely far apart from each other because we knew that our basic kit was gonna be a little bit more closed in. The width of the kit was not gonna come from the overheads, it was gonna come from the room mics. So these overheads, we had just spaced pair, but a little bit closer together than you normally would. And we put them over the cymbals because we were not trying to get a ton of the drums out of them. We were just more so cymbal microphones. What's a little less common is we used a third overhead. We had two spaced pairs and then we had one mic in the middle that was a Coles 4038. This is a darker microphone than the small diaphragm condensers. This is a ribbon microphone, so it's fuller bodied, it's a little darker. We also compressed it like crazy with a DBX 165. We did this because this mic can give us a little bit extra length on our snare drum sound. We knew that we needed the snare to be super, super bombastic, and sticking a mic right in the middle there, it's gonna kind of gel in with the snare drum. It's gonna give us just extra length, extra energy, and it's also gonna add a little bit of energy to the cymbals as well. For our room mics, we knew that we wanted the rooms to be pretty wide. We set these mics really wide and we kind of on purpose did not measure the microphone's distance from the drum set. Oftentimes you will measure the distance from each room mic to the kick drum, and that way you can ensure that the kick is going to be as in phase as it possibly can be between the two microphones, and it's going to be reinforcing in that way. In this particular kit, we weren't concerned about that simply because we wanted these to be as wide as they possibly could be. We knew that we were going to use these heavily on an overdub, and so the room mics being super wide and technically a little bit out of phase, it's just going to add width. It's not necessarily going to subtract, maybe a little bit, but whatever subtraction is happening, it's worth it for the amount of just big width that we can get from these. If you were to use something like a stereo widener or something like that, that's always messing with phase relationships anyways, right? It's always taking things a little bit out of phase in some interesting ways. This is kind of like the physical version of doing it. So for the overdub kit, this is where they went and moved their whole rig. They didn't necessarily change any of the miking or anything like that. They just moved the whole rig into a parking garage, and they recorded these overdub tom parts. The thing that you'll notice from the recording of this is that the parts are super, super wide, right? So when we went to recreate this, we didn't necessarily take everything into a parking garage, but we decided that we're gonna use mostly room mics on these recordings. That width that you hear on the recording just when the overdubs come in, there's nothing artificial that's causing that. The width is caused by two microphones that are spaced far apart. And when you space microphones far apart and they're in a big space, the information that's going to the two microphones is really, really different, right? You're getting all the reflections from this side of the parking garage on this side, you're getting all the reflections from this side of the parking garage on this mic, and the result is a wider image. Width in stereo recording, it comes from how different the two microphones are. If you have these microphones a little closer together, there's going to be more similarities between the two mics, and thus the image kind of gets closer. And if we can make it so that the information going to the two mics is really, really different, it's going to get really, really wide. This is also going to help in just how these two drum sets interact. If you record toms as just overdubs, what you end up with is like this big kind of mushy mess. You end up with a bunch of these weird phase interactions because you have this low end from these toms interacting, and it's really, really difficult to deal with. If you record tom overdubs but you mostly use the room mics, it takes care of a bunch of those issues. It takes care of some of the interaction because all of a sudden these toms are super wide and the other toms are more closed in, so they're not stepping on each other as much. It takes care of some of the frequency problems because inherently, if you record toms from further away, you're going to get more of the upper order harmonics. You're not going to get quite as much of the fundamental frequency that's going to interact in weird ways. And so just naturally the low end is not quite as intense, but it still feels full and natural. But they're going to play together a little better. You also get a depth thing that lets them interact together. It's kind of like thinking of a mix in terms of not just the left side of the mix and the right side of the mix, but the front of the mix and the back of the mix. And if you think of the mix in 3 dimensions, how much things are stepping on each other, it has to do with their dimension as well. So if you have your drum kit that's right here and you have a bunch of toms in the kit right here, and you have this other kit that's wider and it's also further back, they're not going to feel like they're fighting each other so much because they're at different points of depth. Because we recorded this in a studio and not a parking garage, we're going to fake it a little bit. We're going to add a little bit of Reverb to give ourselves like a parking garage sound. We are going to compress this whole thing together with parallel compression, right? That is going to help make it so that these do not feel like 2 separate kits. They feel like one thing. And then we're also going to add just a little bit of basic reverb to the snare drum using Valhalla Room. That was My Hero by the Foo Fighters.
Thank you for watching, and please let us know in the comments what other Dave Grohl songs you'd like to hear us break down. We'll see you next time.